Hey everybody, Motorpoet 59 here. I'm just talk a little bit about these crime surges that have been happening since the whole defund the police and the BLM and government pandering. Uh, Crime has been out of control, especially in the cities that have already been pretty much racked with violence from the protests, the BLM, the George Floyd, everything that came down the pike, someone was protesting, and instead of standing out there with signs, because they weren't protests, they were violent, they were the insurrections. They just didn't happen to happen to federal governments, but they did happen to police stations, city halls. They happened to plenty of local governments, but you didn't hear the media going on about that. Uh, but the crime has surged in Seattle, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Chicago. I don't know if the crime has surged in Chicago because it's always been way, way higher than anywhere else as far as big cities in the nation. But crime is going crazy because the police for one thing, we've had thousands of police across the United States quit. They have just resigned. They've left the police force because they're not allowed to do their jobs, and they're not going to take a chance on becoming national news for doing their job the way they were trained to do their job, just like the cops in the George Floyd case. George Floyd. Two first names, it always confuses me. But those cities their crime has gone over the top, and it's starting to happen in other places. You know why? Because criminals are realizing they've always had the hardcore criminals have always known this, but now the petty criminals are starting to realize that there's no need to fear the police. There's no need to fear punishment. And many of these towns are these liberal, gun-free zones. They know they don't even have to fear the populace. They don't have to fear retribution. They don't have to be afraid that somebody in a house they're going to kick the door in is going to shoot them. You live in Bakersfield, California, you kick somebody's door open, chances are you're going to get killed. I know that's what's going to happen in my house, but in these cities where people can have guns, that's not happening. People are being killed. Murders are way, way up. Home invasions, while people are home, are sky high, because there's no fear of punishment. And the Democrat politicians refuse to address this, as they refuse to address anything that doesn't follow the narrative that they created to get where they are. And you're not going to hear about these crime rates going up unless you listen to a conservative radio or TV. And as much as I hate to say it, because Fox is kind of, since the children have taken over, has kind of started leaning to the left. But they're still the only place you're going to get any of the real stories, or at least both sides of the stories. You're not going to get that on CNN or MSNBC. You're not going to get that on NPR, but you will get it on Fox News and Fox Radio. And there are other places and other websites that aren't involved with Fox that will tell you the truth of the matter, but you're not going to hear it from the Democrats. And right now, what's kind of disturbing is you're not hearing it from a lot of Republican elected representatives. You're not hearing it from the rhinos. The Republicans should be up in arms. They always get ballsy whenever they don't have the numbers to actually do anything, but they're not doing that right now. And that's kind of disheartening. Whenever you take the cops out of the equation, crime will always go up. Put the cops in the equation, crime will go down. Will it stop? Of course it won't. Will people be killed in the future by cops? Of course they will. But as in the past, it's going to be a lot more white people than it is black people who get killed by cops. But that's something else the media never talks about. That's something you're not going to hear the BLM say is, hey, you know what? There were 56 black people killed this last weekend, but you know what? There were 86 white people killed. They're not going to say that. That doesn't help their narrative at all. And so they will continue to ignore the bigger problem, which is the ridiculousness of defunding police or declawing police. Maybe you don't get rid of cops, but maybe you tell them, hey, you can't do this. If you see two people making a drug deal, what you think is a drug deal on a corner, just keep going. Don't stop and risk some kind of confrontation in which our police department may end up in some sort of litigation. Don't do that. We don't want to be in the news. Police are now afraid, at least the cities that are running the police are afraid to let the police do their job. The commissioners and the captains, the ones that haven't resigned, are afraid to let their officers do their jobs, and many officers are getting to where they're either going to leave the police force or they're just not going to care. They're going to drive by and they're going to see people fighting on the street, and they're just going to drive by and let them fight, come back when it's all over, and count the bodies. Do you blame them? What do you think? Do you think that defunding police, I know I've done videos about this and made posts about it. What do you think? You think it's a good idea? Or do you think that the crime surge that's going on is a big problem, the way I think? So let me know in the comments below. Shoot me an email, motorpoet59@gmail.com. Like, share, subscribe, click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content. See you all later.